Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're digging into a really interesting source that makes a bold claim that there isn't just one feminism. Nope, it argues there are actually two, and they're lacked in a battle for the very soul of the women's movement. Okay, so let's jump right in. This quote, wow, it's from 1926, and it just sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? It basically tells us that this debate we're about to get into, it's not new, not at all. We're talking about a conflict that's been simmering for almost 100 years, and it boils down to this huge question. Is feminism about what makes women a distinct political group, or is it about what makes us all human beings? All right, so the source kicks things off by looking at what it calls the new feminism, and it really zooms in on the mindset of the leaders, the academics, the intellectuals behind it. The core idea? That they see themselves as being under constant siege. So what's at the heart of this state of siege feeling? Well, according to the source, it's the conviction that American society is fundamentally a patriarchy. We're not just talking about some outdated traditions here. The argument is that it's a constant, ongoing gender war, a system where men as a class are pitted against women. And get this slide gives us a snapshot from an actual feminist conference the author went to in 1992. And the vibe was intense. You have these prominent, successful professors talking about feeling isolated and powerless. One speaker even compared her work to the struggles of people tortured under Pinochet. Think about that. Anger and rage weren't just feelings, they were seen as political tools. Gloria Steinem is even quoted as saying the reason for rage is that the alternative is depression. It really paints a picture of a movement that felt it was fighting for its life. So the source puts a label on this ideology. It calls it gender feminism. And the core idea is pretty straightforward. It's a worldview that filters everything through a lens of power and oppression between the sexes. We're talking everything from government down to your personal relationships. And the goal? It's not just tweaking the system. It's a radical transformation of the whole thing. And here's a pretty wild example of how far this lens can go. A musicologist, looking at Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, described it as, well, you can read it right there, the rage of a rapist. This is the source's key example of how, once you adopt this particular worldview, you can start to see systemic oppression literally everywhere, even in places you'd least expect, like a masterpiece of classical music. Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Now let's flip it. The source draws a really sharp contrast between that and what it calls the original feminist movement, the historical roots. And this old feminism, as the source calls it, is anchored in a real specific historical moment. Seneca Falls, 1848, the very first women's rights convention. And the goal here was totally different. It wasn't about overthrowing the system, it was about getting a seat at the table. They literally modeled their Declaration of Sentiments on the Declaration of Independence. They were saying, hey, these founding principles, they should apply to us too. And just look at their demands. The source really emphasizes how concrete and practical this all was. There's no abstract theory here. It's a clear-cut list of injustices they wanted to fix. Give us the vote. End laws that make a husband our master. Give us a real voice in making the laws. These were specific, achievable goals. And this quote from Elizabeth Cady Stanton, it just sums it all up, doesn't it? We ask no better laws than those you have made for yourselves. It's not a rejection of the system, it's a demand for equal access to it. The basic idea was one of fairness. Just apply the same rules and protections to us that you apply to yourselves. So, just like the other side had a name, this one does too. The source calls it equity feminism. And the name says it all, really. The central goal is achieving equity, fair treatment, equal opportunity by reforming laws and policies. It's all about working within the existing structures to make them fair for everyone. Okay, so we've laid out the two sides. Now let's put them head to head and really see where they diverge according to the source. This chart really spells out the divide, doesn't it? You've got equity feminism on one side, focused on legal equality and individual justice, very much in the tradition of classical liberalism. Then you have gender feminism, which is far more radical. It argues the whole system is the problem, that women need to be seen as a political class and that nothing is off limits because the personal is political. Two very, very different paths. So, where did this split lead? Well, the source argues that as gender feminism became more dominant, it had some really big consequences for the movement as a whole. And here's the author's take on what those consequences were. The claim is that the movement kind of turned inward. Instead of focusing on changing laws, it started focusing on grievance and consciousness raising. It became less about getting women into the halls of power and more about creating a resentful community bonded by a shared sense of outrage. The focus shifted from big political battles to personal slights, seeing them as proof of this huge oppressive system. To put it simply, the argument is that the battlefield changed. It moved from the courthouse to the classroom. The goal wasn't just to change laws anymore, it was to change consciousness itself. So there you have it. The source lays out this picture of a movement divided against itself, a tale of two feminisms, one that wants a piece of the pie and one that wants to throw the whole pie out and bake a new one. And that really leaves us with a final thought, a question for you to chew on. What defines the principles of feminism today? Which of these two paths does it seem to be on?